Hey, I'm Carol Gashoro, and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. Now, for the first time in history, America elected a convicted felon, Donald Trump, to be president, who also has 4 criminal indictments and ongoing lawsuits. Even his crude and self-indulgent behavior on the campaign trail was not enough to deter voters from supporting him in this year's presidential race. White male and female voters and Latino men all voted for Trump in significant numbers. Trump also followed through on his campaign promise to woo voters of color disillusioned with the Democratic Party's failure to address their material conditions. Here to help us discuss the results of the 2024 presidential election and what the next 4 years promise are New York City Council member Althea Stevens, former New York State Assembly member Clayton Powell IV, and chairperson of the December 12th movement, Omowale Clay. I'm Carol Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. Althea, I'll start with you. When you look at the election results, Trump was able to win the popular vote and the Electoral College. Do we understand that as a mandate for him to carry out his political agenda, or do we look at it as a Democratic Party failure?
I think both exist, right? So, one, I think I want to even go back to when this all happened and VP Harris took over as the head of the ticket. One of my issues was that we always put women, and Black women specifically, to be miracle workers. And for me, that was like, well, what are we doing? Like, why is this the setup that we're giving her, like, to even start out a presidential election? And I think that there was a lot of criticism off the ground around like, oh, she doesn't have a platform, she doesn't have this. How would you have that in 2 weeks, right? And understanding all the different things and elements that she had to put together. So I think that
But if we think about it, you know, she had a front row seat for 4 years. Wouldn't that give her a sense of exactly what was working, what was not working? Why not?
Because that's not your job as VP, and I think that is the misconception, that people don't understand how these apparatuses work. And so you can have a front row seat and you can think you have a plan of what you want to do, but when it's time to get in those positions, sometimes it takes time to roll that out. And having 100 days to roll out an election, a nationwide election, to me was always, she already was behind the totem pole. But let's not forget the Democratic Party has not listened to the people for years. And being a part of the Democratic Party and knowing, being here and being a part of it and seeing how they don't listen to the young people, how they don't listen to the working class people, how they don't listen to anyone. And you have all these people, when we do say things, they are now even blaming, saying it's the left. And it's like, if you look at the people who were running, none of them were talking about any political or radical progressive ideas. They were all trying to play into the Republican Party. Right. And that's where they messed up at.
Okay. Adam, how do you explain the surge in Latino male voters for Trump? He didn't do as well when you look at the 2020 election, but he seemed to have, you know, been able to kind of woo some of those folks into his fold. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, these are the same Latinos who overwhelmingly rejected Trump, as you mentioned, in 2020 and voted for Biden. But it's been seen in many other ethnic categories. You got more Black men now voting for Trump versus 2020.
But it wasn't that
white
big
women.
a number, right? It was about maybe almost
it
like
was a
4
huge
percentage point. No, it wasn't that big.
No, I'm talking about Latinos. Huge difference.
Right, but
Biden
not Black
won
males.
65 to 32%, and now it's practically 50-50 in 2024.
Okay.
You know, and these are not Trumpsters, obviously. They rejected him 4 years ago. But there's a sense, not just Latinos, but some Blacks, you know, people in general, that they don't like Trump. They dislike the man. But there's a sense that, you know, their gas might be cheaper, their groceries might be cheaper.
When you think
whether
about,
that's true or false.
Right,
that's
but when you think about what he said on the campaign trail, right, and being very, very clear and concise that he's going to engage in mass deportations.
Yes.
In fact, that's one of the pillars on his platform.
Yes.
How then do we explain Latinos flocking towards him, even though we understand that immigration is going to affect a lot of people?
Affect everybody.
Right,
Yeah.
But they seem to have flocked towards him, even though they understood that what he's going to do is probably going to come to fruition.
Again, as the council member stated, I think Kamala Harris got a raw deal being put there at the very end. And people rejected that, unfortunately. They feel, again, a lot of people who do not like Trump, because there are Trumpsters who will vote for him no matter what. But obviously we saw a shift from 2020, 2024 from people who don't like Donald Trump. They don't. But they feel that their situation might be better or might improve with him.
What's your take on this? Is it a mandate for Trump given his victory and decisive victory, or is it just a failure of the Democratic Party, as Althea indicated earlier?
Well, you know, Kiro, I think first, it is a failure on the part of our understanding of politics in this country, that there's one system. It's like a snake with two heads, Republican, Democrat. One of the faults of the Democrats now is they want to start to blame black men or blame Latino men, and they want to throw blame. They have been moving further to the right over the past decades. You know, years ago, Bill Clinton would have been a Republican. He became a Democrat, So I don't want to make excuses in the terms of the frick or the frack. The bottom line is there's one system, and that system is moving more quickly to the position of fascism in this country. And I want people to understand what that means. It means the obliteration of a constitutional democracy, which was never that reality for us, ever. Black people in this country, in terms of an agenda, that's been one of our struggles. As a former council member, Charles Barron, used to say that we have more blacks in elected offices than ever in history, and we don't have any power. And we don't have any power because we've never had an agenda. And I'm always astounded by the question of the political astuteness, the political knowledge and understanding of politics. You don't have to, to be elected, you don't have to present what you've studied, what you understand. Most of the people that are black in this country elected, their understanding of the political economy is nil. Their understanding of white supremacy is nil.
Okay.
So in this situation, this loss is going to be have a tremendous effect on us because it pushes the country further and further toward fascism, and we'll be a target of that.
Okay. Althea, I want to pick up on what Omowale said. So is there any likelihood that a Kamala Harris, who is really a centrist or even a neoliberal, would be able to beat an open fascist?
I think we have to think about it in much bigger terms of just like, is she going to be able to beat a fascist, right? I think for me, looking at the chessboard, when you saw things like Trump coming to the Bronx and me being a Democrat and in the party saying like, what are we doing? Nobody cares, we're going to do a counter rally. When you saw things like him coming back and going to barbershops and meeting people and meeting them where they were at, and the Democratic Party doing nothing. For me, it was just one of the things like, what is the signal that we're sending? And so I think that absolutely she could have beat him, but I don't think that the work that needed to be put in and reaching the people where they were at was done in a way that was needed. I think that obviously we focused on swing states and states that we wanted to make sure that we got, but you also can't forget about the people that are already with you.
But wasn't that their fault? Because once they initially realized that Joe Biden can't run and shouldn't run, right? That should have been discussed almost at the beginning of his term, as opposed to getting to the tail end of his term and saying, well, we don't think you should run. We're going to bring Kamala on, who only had approximately, 110 days?
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole situation was messy and really unacceptable to me, honestly. I think that it was irresponsible on everyone's part. And even to hear now where they're saying like, well, we had to do this because, the Democratic conference was coming. Conference was coming up. Who cares? That is not a real thing. Like, let's step back and evaluate what makes the most sense and really put together a plan. And instead of us saying, like, let's focus on, getting to the conference, let's focus on actually winning an election. Okay. Which one do we want?
All right. Adam, I want to bring you in here. You're a party guy. You're a big Democratic fan. But what would your advice be in terms of how they handled this whole thing?
It was handled improperly, obviously. I mean, even going back to January, February, people were saying that Biden should not run, but it's too late for him to drop out, and it wasn't too late. They should have had an open primary, and perhaps Kamala Harris would have won the open primary system, would have been stronger for it. But listen, for many years, we've been saying the Democratic Party has taken us for granted, taken blacks for granted, taken Latinos for granted, taken poor people for granted. And wasn't it Joe Biden that said, oh, if you don't vote for me, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't black enough?
Right.
That arrogance is manifesting itself now, whereby you cannot take anybody for granted. You have to really go out there and show them and reach out and tell them what it is you're going to do to better their lives.
Omowale, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? You said two heads, one snake. do black folks still look towards the Democratic Party with the hope that it might change, or do we look at the third party alternative?
Whatever the organization is, the question is, what's our agenda in it? See, that's what's critical. What's our agenda? In New York City right now, who controls the politicians in New York City? Is the machine. The Democratic machine controls them. And you know what dictates that? Them getting elected again. So the question is, I always question it, they're not in office as a political mission to free our people. They're in office almost like a job. And the bottom line is, the way to structure it, if you don't get the money to do but there's no independent thought, no agenda for our people, that doesn't exist. And so Trump's ability, and the Republicans, he'll just say something, but who is he talking to, and how is it carried out? When he had a problem with the way the press was dealing with him, they created their whole media. Look, there's a whole new media out there that talks to people a certain way. So my concern is, going forward is, and it's no accident that I have Malcolm's cap on. It's no accident that Malcolm talked about self-determination. For us to define ourselves in this and then having that strength to move to make alliances about our agenda. One of the serious problems we have is that we're not in control of our own politics, and that has to happen. 2025 is a centennial of Malcolm X. And my view is, during the centennial, Trump, but we need to resurrect and replant ourselves on some of the freedom fighters who charted a course for us. And the course was electoral politics is a tactic. It's not a strategy. Do you know, Karu, that after the election, the day after the election, the 10 richest people in this country made $69 billion in the stock market. Elon Musk made $29 billion of that money. And because that's who runs this country. That's who tells Trump what to do. That's who tells Biden to not run. That's who promotes Harris.
All right, let me come to Althea. Althea, so what's your take on that? This idea that even though we have significant numbers of black politicians, that they're essentially, bought and sold with regard to being in the party and really following the party mandate as opposed to what the people need.
Well, I just want to start off saying I am not bought and sold by anybody. Let's start there. But I can't say that for everybody, right? I think that for me, I was a person who was able to come in independently, not by anyone promoting me. I literally said, I want to come to do the work. And that has been my struggle here ever since I got here, right? And so even when you hear things like there's no agenda, a black agenda, there is no black agenda, which has been one of my pet peeves, because what are we doing? Even if VP Harris would have won, what were we going to ask her for? We didn't have a clear agenda. And so even thinking about when Obama won, everyone's like, he didn't live up to the hype and he didn't do the things that we wanted. What did we want? And we have to stop allowing other people to create this narrative for us. And again, we have a lot of black electeds in power right now in New York City. And I have been saying and screaming, saying, what are we doing? What's our agenda? And so honestly, that is what I've been doubling down on, trying to organize the black electeds and organize everyone to come together so we can have a real agenda, so we can have real ask and real outcomes and set goals.
All right. Well, that was pretty good, but we'll have to stop there. When we come back, we'll discuss what race relations might look like under a Trump presidency. I'm Kerry Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. In the wake of Trump's victory, a wave of racist text messages was sent to black people across the country, telling them to report for slavery. In response, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries stated, and I quote, "The extremists in America who feel empowered, we will not be intimidated by anyone." Given Trump's racism during his campaign, many black people have continued to express concerns that Trump will continue to exploit racial animus to fuel white rage. Here to help us discuss how race relations will play out during Trump's presidency, our previous guest, New York City Council member Althea Stevens, former New York State Assembly member Adam Clayton Powell IV, and chairperson of the December 12th movement, Omowale Clay. Adam, I want to start with you. What can black folks and Latinos expect going into the next 4 years?
It's going to be ugly. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's going to be ugly. There's a sense among, some white folk that they see their power and their country shifting, becoming more black and brown.
But there's nothing new there. That's always
well,
been
but
the
it's
case for a long time.
it's becoming more and more real than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. They have a date, was it 2050 or 2049, that the minorities will become the majority. And some white folk are not taking, that too kindly.
Althea, what's your take on that?
I mean, even the whole idea around when, a lot of the white supremacists are saying like the majority is going to become the minority, they already are the minority. The reality is we've allowed them to separate us as minority groups when if we all work together and united, they would already be the minority, but they have allowed us to really dilute us and say that those are your issues, that's a black issue, or that's this. And so how are we working together to unify? And so that has always been my big pushback. And so things are going to be really ugly, but ugly for who is the question, right? I think especially black people specifically, we've been in this country and we've seen the ugly side of racism. And I think that other people are going to see it in a way that they have not seen it before. And so thinking about what does that look like around how does that struggle play out in those different communities, and what are you guys going to do to prepare for it? Because again, this idea that white supremacy is only going to affect black people or Latinos just is not a reality, right? And I think even when we think about the election, a lot of this, we have to say what it is. This was anti-blackness. And a lot of folks voted against their best interests to say that I am leaning into my whiteness. And no one wants to really say that, but that's the reality of what it is.
Omowale, what does self-determination for black folks and for Latinx folks look in the next 4 years?
2025, Karu, it's time to go to work. I told you the centennial of Malcolm X is coming up. Our answer has to be to organize, organize, organize. I feel very positive about the efforts of the Boeing workers, of the UAW workers, of the unions in terms of their fight, what happened in Amazon. So I see a very positive side if we organize and don't get tailed behind some leadership. Example, Hakeem Jeffries is an embarrassment. He was on the news today talking about, the Republicans and Democrats, if we can just come together and da-da-da-da-da. He was more interested in being head of the Congress in that regard. But most of these folks, when do you see them? Where have you seen the Congressional Black Caucus? You haven't heard anything from them. You don't even know who the head of the Congressional Black Caucus is. The Democratic Party has silenced them because they have silenced themselves, because their agenda is not the same agenda that affects our people. During the COVID, they put a moratorium on evictions. They put a moratorium on court cases. They put a moratorium on that. And you know what that did? It meant for children in school, it cut poverty for them in half. Just that supplement they got. What did the Biden administration? It ended it. But why did it have to end? The money was there. See, the money is there. It's the priority of it. So my view is we have to go to work. We have to organize, organize, organize. And I'm very optimistic that we will beat back these attempts to put us further back in history. I am confident that we'll be able to do that.
Adam, what's your take on how the Democratic Party at least attempts to fight fascism? Because one of the things that they were really good at during the campaign is to say, hey, Trump is a fascist. But as soon as he won, they sort of dialed all that down. And I'm just wondering, does Trump stop being a fascist because he's been elected, or do you now begin figuring out how you can fight, the next 4 years?
No, he's going to be the same Trump. In fact, it may be worse because now he has no re-election, and he has a Supreme Court saying that he has absolute immunity. So we're going to see a worse Trump presidency than we saw from 2016. How do we fight that? I mean, it's a difficult road ahead. But I think one thing is we cannot, start insulting each other and blaming each other. And, we're not going to bring people into the Democratic fold in that way. Not that the Democratic Party is the answer. It's not. But I think good people within any particular structure can create change, and that's what we need. We need good people of goodwill to come to the Democratic Party, hopefully, and that might, persuade others and improve things, because reality is we're facing a dark road ahead.
Althea, picking up on something Omowale said with regard to Malcolm and his, by any means necessary, in pursuit of freedom. But when we look at the landscape, at least for the next 4 years, there's a big concern about white militias, the Proud Boys, and the right has never been, scared of inflicting violence on colored folks. How then do we address that? How do we move forward?
I mean, I think the reality is we already know that Trump said that police officers are also going to have immunity as well. That was one of the things that he promised on the campaign. So we should expect that we're going to see a rise in Black and brown people being killed openly, and that's going to be okay. I think militias is another thing, but I think Omowale we have to organize. How do we protect each other? But this is something that I've been talking about even before Trump was here. What does community safety look like? Because the reality is we have to be our brother's keeper, and how do we support, protect, and keep each other safe? And that's what it is. And so yes, this has given white supremacy an open range of saying, like, I can come out the closet, I don't have to hide anymore, and so I can do it up front and in the public and in the open, but they've always been there. This is not anything new. They have been going, militias have been around since forever. They've been training, they've been doing all these things, but it's about how are we gonna keep each other safe?
Omowale, I want you to have the last word on this. When we look at the landscape, particularly a resurgent white supremacy, white nationalism, fascism is back in vogue, and the Democratic Party is not the answer. Can we really place all this on Trump, or is there another way to look at this as we continue our way forward?
I think, first on this question around the militias, our struggle is to organize and defend ourselves. Malcolm was always instrumental in talking to us about our right to self-defense, and not to turn the other cheek, but to defend both cheeks in that regard. We have a lot of work to do. We've been working in Brooklyn and other parts of the city around taking some of our young people they're putting guns in their hands to shoot each other, to understand the politics of a gun and who it's being used against. We just need to be organized. A lot of young people in the city are organized. They're organized under some of the wrong ideology. And so that's why I'm saying I feel very strongly that we're not going to take nothing from nobody, and we never have. We're the black people that came through slavery. We're the black people who came through the earliest expressions of fascism. Most people don't even know what fascism is. You want to know what fascism is? Look at the colonization of our people. When you couldn't have anything in your own country, not even speak your own language. That's where they learned fascist techniques from, on us. So to understand fascism, yes, fascism is growing in this country, and we have to mobilize and educate our people around that. And so I'm confident that black people are smart enough, brave enough, and determined enough to defend themselves. The question is, which way forward? And I say this to all of your listeners. There's one system here, one system. The parties that it controls, different heads, but the same system. We have to create an agenda, and we have to create a structure. And as the former Assemblyman raised, and I agree, we have to organize, we have to reach far in our community, but we can't organize in the same old way. We can't let someone somewhere else dictate our politics to us. We need to read, we need to study, we need to talk to our people in terms of that and educate them around what's going on. So I see even under Trump, we're not afraid.
Adam, I want to come back to you. So looking at the election results and the significant losses that occurred, what is the one thing that you can draw away from this that might point you and say, look, there's still some hope for us moving forward?
Don't take people for granted. I mean, hopefully that's a message that comes out, so that, the parties, all parties, that really reach out to communities and don't take them for granted. What we can build up in the next 4 years, just hopefully that will bring us closer together. Hopefully, as a brother was saying, the message will be stronger. Our communities hopefully will come back to each other and empower each other, because we cannot depend on government. We cannot depend on the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
Althea, same question for you.
I got into politics because young people said that they did not feel heard, seen, or represented, and that's still going to be my mission, right? I think that all parties take young people for granted. They don't allow them to be a part of the conversation, and when they do, they often are told that what they're saying isn't correct. And so for me, my mission is always going to be to uplift, support, and really organize and educate our young people to understand this system so that they can make sure that they have the tools to take over the system. Because what we've done here is isolated them, and it's really their job to really make the changes that we want to see.
All right, that was a fantastic conversation, but we have to end it there. I want to thank our guests, Councilmember Althea Stevens, former Assembly Member Adam Clayton Powell IV, and Chairperson of the December 12th Movement, Omowale Clay. When we come back, I'll share some final thoughts. I'm Kerry Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. And now for some closing thoughts. While the Democratic Party continues to figure out why it lost so decisively to a racist, sexist, and convicted felon, one thing is clear. Its continued reliance on failed neoliberal policies are a poor response to the rising fascism in the Republican Party. Democrats have continued to ignore legitimate claims that their policies have not been able to address the material needs of poor and working people across the country. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that they lost, and perhaps it is time for people to consider breaking with the duopoly and building a third party centered on addressing the needs of poor and working people. I'm Kerry Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. And to stay connected with all the news we're covering, check us out on the CUNY TV app. You don't want to miss this.